for them. Leland Vittert on a Friday night. What's better than that?
There you go, my friend. You know, you're talking about the far extremes, and then there's the middle. 90% of the American middle wants two things that you talk about a lot: term limits and a ban on stock trading for members of Congress. They haven't gotten it. They've wanted it for 15 years. They've been promised it. And politicians in Washington still wonder why everybody outside of Washington hates Washington.
If you or I traded a stock after we did a segment on the company, we would be in hot water. I would likely be fired. You matter too much to the company.
Oh.
But these members of Congress do it with impunity as long as they report it within 45 days. Crazy, crazy.
Yeah, well, it's why people hate Washington. Chris, have a great weekend. May you catch some very large fish. I'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Thank you.
All right. When Cuomo's out on his fishing boat with all of his buddies, and when you're with your friends, and when I'm watching the Masters, we're going to all be talking about one thing: how scared we are. As we told you when President Biden had press conferences and the press and everything else talking about the economy being great, we told you back then, people don't need to be told how to feel. It doesn't matter what you tell them, because they know it. They know economically what position they are in. And right now, Americans are scared. So, as a matter of fact, is the rest of the world. And no promises, no amount of promises by President Trump is going to make it better. And for the first time in a major financial crisis, which is what we are in right now, it is not over. It is not even close to over. People around the world are betting against America. And that's our Why It Matters memo tonight. Yes, stocks went up today. But Wall Street is not Main Street. And Main Street is scared. Main streets across the world are scared. Consumer confidence in America is at its second lowest since the 1950s. It's down 30 points in just 1 year. President Trump spoke about it all just moments ago on Air Force One.
I think the markets were solid today. I think people are saying we're in great shape. We're making a lot of money as a country now for the first time in a long time. I've always gotten along well with President Xi. We had a good relationship, very good. And I think something positive is going to come out of it. We're the currency of choice. We're always going to be. The bond market's going good. It had a little moment, but I solved that problem very quickly.
Yeah, the problem isn't solved. And that's the problem, that President Trump has more work to do. People aren't trusting Trump. And that's not me saying it. That's Americans saying it with their hard-earned money. We know that because scared people are doing something that is even scarier. Every financial crisis of my lifetime, people rush to buy U.S. Treasury bills. The safest bet in the world has always been the full faith and credit of the United States. The safest bet in the world is betting on America. It is very simple. Supply and demand. People buy more treasuries in time of crisis. The price of treasury goes up with higher demand. The yield, the percentage paid, goes down. And this, over the past 80 years, has allowed the U.S. government, no matter which party is in control, incredible flexibility in times of crisis. Think the 2008 financial crisis. Think COVID. Both times, the world bet on America. You can think about all the debt issued during COVID at very low interest rates. There's low treasury yields, your car loans are low, your mortgage rates are low. In crisis, people around the world wanted the security, and the United States provided that. For the first time now, the opposite is happening. The yield on treasuries is going up and the price is going down because more people are selling than buying. They're not rushing to the security of the United States. And yes, this is a simplification, but the takeaway is very real. The lack of demand for treasuries at a time of financial panic is different than it has ever been before, and it is dangerous for America. As Axios puts it, the world's hot new trade is sell America. This weakens America across the board. The Wall Street Journal writes, never bet against America, it said, and normally global investors don't want to. It's a sign of the magnitude of Mr. Trump's tariff mistake that he's goading them into doing so, into betting against America. He needs a policy reversal, not a pause. We here on the program have spent the past 10 days largely defending President Trump because what he is doing is powerful and it needs to be done. It's a gamble like what Ronald Reagan did to take on the Soviets. Trump wants to confront China, has to be done because they want to replace the United States, and Trump wants to level the playing field. These two things are unquestionably good and noble goals. But Trump and his team have to figure out a way to do that makes America stronger, not weaker. Because over the past 10 days, America has become a lot weaker. And that's risky. We begin tonight with Danielle Pletka, Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, and Michael K. Farr, President and CEO of the wealth management firm Farr, Miller & Washington, also author of the book, Restoring Our American Dream, The Best Investment. Michael, you are known as Mr. Calm in times of crisis. You are called upon to provide this commentary. Am I being too alarmist in what I have laid out?
I don't think you're being too alarmist, Leland. We only have the full faith and credit and trust of the world that we've earned over centuries. And as every one of our grandparents probably said in one way or another, you know, it takes a lifetime to build a reputation and about 20 minutes to destroy it. So if you were going to loan me money, you would want to know a couple of things. One, you'd want to know if I could pay you back somehow, whether you liked the project or whatever it was I was doing. And then the other thing you would look at and have to say is, do I trust this guy? Will he pay me back? Will he do what he says he's going to do? So when we talk about the full faith and credit of the United States, it's enormously important. Right now, the amount of money we spend on servicing, just paying interest on the U.S. debt, is more than we pay for the Defense Department budget. If you take those interest rates higher and make that debt more expensive, it gets really expensive just to be an American. It's so important that we maintain our reputation, Leland, and I think it's good that you're ringing this bell. I'm not sure how loudly we have to ring it quite yet, but I think you're exactly right in warning America that we have to stay on the tried and true path of trustworthiness and maintain our reputation.
And predictability, right? So, Danielle, how do you unring this bell? You keep seeing Trump trying to unring it. Has he yet?
No, I don't think he has. I think the problem for everybody is that they see what he's doing, but they don't know what his aims are. They don't know what his end game is. And that end game keeps changing, right? So does he want to upend the global trading system? Does he want to punish the world for allowing China into the global trading system? Does he want to equalize the playing field, which is very hard to do? What is his game? And I think it's not just me, an economic illiterate, that does not know. It is everybody who's trading on Wall Street. It is all of our foreign allies. Even our adversaries, I think, are not entirely certain.
Right.
And it is, as you both rightly said, that uncertainty that is a bell that's very hard to unring.
Yeah, Donald Trump always talks about the power of his unpredictability, and his supporters will say that being willing to be seen as crazy was very useful to him in his first term. And something interesting is happening in America, that there is a shift now, I think you could almost say, between Wall Street and Main Street. Roughly, 50% of Americans don't hold stocks or have what you'd call exposure to the stock market, and they are quickly coming to the side of Donald Trump. Here's CNN's take.
A tie on this question, on a question that has traditionally overwhelmingly been a Democratic advantage. Which party cares more for the needs of people like you? It's truly something I would not have expected to see, especially after this tariff war had begun.
Michael Farr, how do you explain that?
I think people get worried when they don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, when they don't know what the future is, when we don't have any predictability.
Yeah, but right, okay, I get you, though, but Donald Trump is getting more people to say that he cares about people like them. Is he tapping into an anger on Main Street and the rest of America that all of us who sit around and talk about these highbrow ideas don't understand?
Yes, I think he is. Certainly he is. I think it was a huge part of the base that helped get him elected. We've seen a huge disparity in incomes, and whether the people who have property and whether they own homes and whether they have stocks and all of those things, those people have gotten wealthy. A lot of the country hasn't gotten wealthy. They can't afford the life that they're living. And the biggest irony and the big shame here is that when these tariffs and as these tariffs are progressing, prices are going up and will be unaffordable by precisely the group that's beginning to support him more. The most vulnerable among us financially suffer as prices rise. And it's awful that they're supporting this policy. It tells me they really don't understand what's going on.
Well, people at some point have been promised help from both sides on Washington. They haven't gotten it, and now they're seeing this and saying, "Hey, somebody's talking the language that I understand, which is jobs coming back."
But the Brits, Leland, the Brits were sold a bill of goods to vote for Brexit, and now they're regretting it. They were told a story that their lives were somehow going to get better if they'd only vote this way, and then they could stand on their own and be all. Doesn't work. Pay attention, folks. You're being sold a bill of goods.
You make a great point with Brexit. The point that this has been made by the White House to explain all of this is, and I think, Danielle, you make a good point, the goalposts have changed a number of times. But if we are to put the best read on it we can, it is to somehow focus the world against China. Here's Kevin O'Leary talking about why that's important.
It's the government. They cheat, they steal, they don't play by the rules, and I've had enough. And so I would like this thing worked out. I don't care about the volatility. I don't care if Trump ratchets it up 25% a day.
What do you mean?
Wait,
Kevin, what do you mean you don't care about volatility if volatility has a direct impact on us as the consumers?
Because we have to fix this problem once and for all. It's killing us. It's killing small business in America. It's killing large businesses. Now, if we have to squeeze Chinese heads to the wall, as I said yesterday when I was testifying, so be it.
You think about all of the focus that's happened right now on what's happening inside America. And Danielle, has there been enough focus on what China has been doing militarily, of growing to the point, financed largely by American consumers, their military to be able to take on the United States, of confronting America's allies, of trying to replace the United States as the world's superpower? How do we tell that story?
So I do think that there's been a lot of attention in the halls of power to what China is doing militarily. What we've seen is increased attention in Congress. I think that Donald Trump, in his first term, really successfully turned around public opinion about China to a clearer understanding of what they're doing. And they have a very integrated security and economic policy, right? They are engaging in trying to take over, for example, the electric car industry, just as they are trying to take over the South China Sea. And we are, for sure, a day late and a dollar short. The problem for us is not the problem for us is not understanding that China is a genuine economic, political, national security threat. The problem for us is engaging in activities that provide opportunities for China. And there are people who I think make very serious and credible arguments that when we say to the world, hey, you're trying to, take advantage of us with your non-tariff and tariff barriers, we are suggesting to them, you should do business with someone who's less of a pain. And unfortunately, that creates opportunities for the Chinese. If the president wanted to be clear about this, he would say, this is about a divorce from China. This is about untying our supply chains from China. This is about responding to the threat that China poses to our allies in Japan and South Korea and Taiwan and Australia and the Philippines and everywhere else. But he's not saying that. And until he says that, we are not going to get that clarity.
Now, look, Americans during the time of Reagan, post 9/11, World War II, when issued that call to arms, for lack of a better term, have responded and sacrificed. Danielle, Michael, good to see both of you. Thank you. Appreciate it. The Supreme Court has said the Trump administration must bring an illegal immigrant back from El Salvador. Why Donald Trump says he'll do it when we come back.
This is NewsNation with a trust rating higher than any of its competitors. NewsNation is proud to be America's fastest growing cable news network. See for yourself at joinnn.com.
Turns out all the pearl clutching over a Hamas enthusiast who wanted to stay in America was perhaps overdone. A judge ruled that DHS could deport Mohammed Khalil. The government says he helped organize some of the most violent student protests over the past 18 months and poses a risk to the United States. He's not a citizen, here as a permanent resident. His lawyer said DHS couldn't deport him for terrorist sympathies because of the First Amendment, and they have appealed. The judge gave Khalil until later this month for that appeal, but this weekend the Trump administration will have to decide what to do about perhaps a far more important case, at least when it comes to public relations, because they admit they made a mistake deporting Kilmar Abrego Garcia. They didn't just deport him, they sent him to the El Salvador Supermax prison. The Supreme Court ordered him back to the United States. Just tonight, President Trump said he would.
They sent the one that was not Tren de Araqua, but he was MS-13.
Just the one that they've said needs to come back.
No, but was he MS-13? Because I only know by that. I mean, I don't know which one, but if the Supreme Court said bring somebody back, I would do that. I respect the Supreme Court.
With us now, Tom Dupree, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General under George W. Bush, Shan Wu, former federal prosecutor, counsel to then Attorney General Janet Reno. Gentlemen, good to see both of you. Shan, if you were talking to the Attorney General's counsel in terms of bringing back Garcia, they don't really have a choice, do they?
No. I would also say, please give an answer to who you're sending to court so they can actually say something to the judge.
When you, there was much made of what happened in the courtroom earlier. Take a listen.
Today in court, for those of you who were there or have heard anything about it, it was the epitome of the lack of due process in a court proceeding in this country. It was shocking. The immigration judge had made up her mind before the hearing even started what she was going to do.
Okay, so that was the hearing as it related to Mohammed Khalil. We'll get to that case in a minute. We're going to play now what happened in court with Garcia. He was the alleged MS-13 gang member that was deported.
Where is Mr. Abrego Garcia right now? What has the government done so far to try to bring him back? What is the government planning to do to carry out the court's order? The government refused to provide any of those pieces of information that the judge ordered them to provide. And they even refused to answer the question about where Kilmar Abrego Garcia is today.
All right, a few things here, Tom. I think the administration was waiting for the president to weigh in and decide whether he wanted to fight this or not, number one. Number two, they're trying to figure out how to get him back at a time when he can have a press conference and as few people possible will watch it.
I agree with you on both fronts. I mean, look, the fact is, I do think that there is kind of a tendency, certainly in the Justice Department, to look to the president for guidance. And I think the president
That's a new thing, right? That's not a, that's a Trump thing.
Yeah, usually you don't wait in that respect, but they do now. And so, look, I think what was going on here is that it was good to hear the president say he respects the orders of the Supreme Court. He's going to bring him back. I mean, you know, from kind of a lawyer's perspective, mission accomplished. They're going to make it happen. I do suspect they'll be able to facilitate his return in short order. And to your point, I think they will want to do it in a way that minimizes the likelihood he becomes a hero to the left upon his return.
Yeah, look, there's going to be a book deal. There's going to be a movie deal. We tried hard at NewsNation to figure out whether we could substantiate the gang MS-13 allegations. Could not do it. So there'll be a lot looked into about him. Moving on to this issue of Mohammed Khalil, and I think this may be the one that goes to a much larger point. Shan Wu, the group there says, his lawyers say they are going to appeal, as you heard from that soundbite earlier. They don't think they got due process. What grounds do they appeal on?
Well, they can appeal really on the factual grounds for what the immigration judge decision reached. And to me, I'm not sure I would agree with them on not having gotten due process. I mean, I think the critical point here is the process finally occurred. They got before an immigration judge. There's also the habeas petition that's still going on in the New Jersey matter. And that really goes more to the question of the constitutionality of the provision they're relying on, which is Rubio says, I decide foreign policy. This is a foreign policy matter. And that's a really big issue for them.
Right. And so to play this out a little bit, this is a First Amendment challenge against the idea that the Secretary of State can unilaterally declare an immigrant, not somebody who is a U.S. citizen, a threat to national security based just on speech.
Yeah, that's it. And look, a few things. First, Shen, when you say that you're not sure about their claims that they were denied due process, I am sure. They were not denied due process. I completely I mean, when they're saying that they weren't given due process in the immigration court hearing, totally wrong. Look, the other thing is that immigration judges don't sit to adjudicate First Amendment claims. They're limited in the types of things they can consider. To Shan's point, the federal judge who's going to hear his habeas case does have wider authority to consider First Amendment arguments and the like, all part of our robust system of due process. He will get his day in court before he's removed from the United States.
Any predictions on whether or not, and I guess this would be a huge thing, right? If all of a sudden you take this law that dates back to 9/11 and says, all right, no longer can you deport someone who has voiced sympathies for terrorist organizations, that's a big change.
Yeah, the problem with this provision of the law is it really hasn't been fleshed out legally. I mean, they've used it so rarely. I mean, it's like...
They're going to use it a lot more.
They're going to use it, right, exactly. And that's why it's going to be a big deal. And that's why he's going to be here a long time, because it's going to be appealed in piecemeal over and over again before it finally reaches the Supreme Court, which may kick it back downstairs again. So it'll be a while.
Any predictions?
Well, look, my prediction is that this is not the ideal person. If I were, in kind of the shoes of people challenging the Trump administration, that I would hold up as a poster child for First Amendment rights. Because the government has said that they have evidence that he is not just expressing political views, but he's whipping up, violent anti-Semitic protests and that sort of thing. So again, he's not the guy that you're going to want to put up and say he is someone who should be allowed to stay in the country to exercise his First Amendment rights. I think there can and will be a lot more sympathetic people out there to press that legal claim.
And the problem is, once you press it and get an answer, sometimes that doesn't work out so well.
Bad facts make bad laws, what the lawyers will tell you.
Huh. It's kind of a smart way to end Friday night. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Shan Wu, Tom Dupree with us. We first wrote about this in War Notes. That's your chance for an inside look at the show every day. These guys subscribe, and they're smarter than I am, so you should too. Warnotes.com to subscribe for free. Delighted, smarter, and you will entertain all of your friends this weekend with your knowledge. Warnotes.com, at Leland Vittert on social media. Should U.S. universities with multi-billion-dollar endowments really get billions from U.S. taxpayers? Well-known professors say it's time to turn off the faucet. Can Trump do it?
You have an endowment over $1 billion. I think you should lose your tax-free status because you're no longer a public servant. You're a hedge fund with classes.
You're listening to On Balance with Leland Vittert on NewsNation's audio stream. Available 24/7 on the NewsNation app, or just say, Alexa, play NewsNation.
You're holding back $400 million from Columbia, $8 billion from Harvard. Can you imagine the money we pay Harvard? They have a $60 billion fund, and we're giving them $8 billion, and we're trying to figure that out.
Trump administration is busy cracking down right now on elite universities. Many now face a reckoning of type. Years in the making, this reckoning is becoming as billions of federal funding is being pulled. But it's not just in the name of efficiency. It's now in the name of equality. Not necessarily a quality of thought, but a quality of why we should be spending this money. Why should U.S. taxpayers empty their pockets to fund elite universities that don't exactly open their gates to average Americans? It's a question that even Professor Scott Galloway of NYU is now asking.
So I believe that if you are not growing your freshman class faster than population growth and you have an endowment over $1 billion, I think you should lose your tax-free status because you're no longer a public servant. You're a hedge fund with classes. This artificial scarcity we manufacture, we could let in more people. Hermes does this. Those bags are not hard to produce. They purposely choke supply, so does Panerai, to create the illusion of scarcity, such that it creates aspirational luxury value and you can raise tuition faster than inflation.
Chris Cillizza, journalist, NewsNation contributor, senior advisor at the DGA Group, with us now.
Hey, dude.
Good to see you.
Happy Friday. I'll beat you to it.
This is one of those institutions that is unpopular, that Donald Trump, unpopular with most of America, elite institutions, that Donald Trump is taking an axe to and forcing Democrats to defend.
Yeah, when we've talked about this before, he's good at putting Democrats in a spot. We talked about this with USAID, and other big government funded
Boys
things.
and girls bathrooms.
Right. He's good at picking fights where I'm not sure he's totally right, but if you're not paying that much attention to it, you're like, well, that doesn't make sense. I'll be totally honest with you. I'll admit my own ignorance. I had no idea that these universities got that amount of federal money. And if I didn't, who spent, not that I'm a genius, but I've spent a long time covering politics in this town, I guarantee you the average person doesn't do it. So, yeah, can I make one slight disagreement? Some of that money, and I don't know how much, and I don't think they need all of it, but some of that money at big places is going to some research, which I do not think is the worst thing in the world, scientific health research.
Right. They're going to medical research.
It's not all bad. It's just a lot of money.
I think we're at a time where so many institutions in America, call it everything from big banks to big legacy media to big institutions, universities with endowments larger than some country's GDP. Albania's GDP, $23 billion. Harvard, $53 billion. Okay,
amazing.
They don't need any of our money. Okay, and they're getting a tax break because the endowment grows tax-free. But that the institutions in America sort of got so fat on the pork on the pork barrel buffet, they so overstepped in so many different ways that it's very easy now to want to cut them down to size.
Yeah, and
it's not just about money; it's about their intrusion into people's lives.
Yes, and I also do think. Look, I went to a high-end university for college, and there is a kind of unity of thought that goes on there that I think they would benefit from, to Professor Galloway's point, expanding the clientele of people who can go to those places. I'm entirely in favor of that. If you've ever spent more than an hour on a college campus in the last 10 years, I mean, it's like...
Well, hold on. To be fair, we got to be precise what we're talking about, right? Because these universities have spent an enormous amount of money and an even more amount of lip service to DEI, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. What they haven't decided is to have any diversity of thought, and that's a very different thing.
And that's the thing that I taught at my alma mater, Georgetown. I taught there in the fall. It was on campaign journalism. Maybe a controversial subject for some, but it was mostly nuts and bolts stuff. But that's the thing to me is the thing that it reminded me of. College should be a place where you're having a diversity of thought. Now, none of us want hate speech. None of us want people to feel uncomfortable to go to class. But there is something to be said.
You should feel uncomfortable in class.
You should have your views challenged in an intellectual, thoughtful way. That's part of how we look. I think we need more of that as adults, candidly. I think people are now in
that's why people
silos and bubbles, right? Yeah. But it is a thing. I think there is a nervousness in higher education to say, well, this isn't the only view. There are a lot of views, and one of the great things about college is you're exploring what the various views are out there because you're forming your own views. That's how that's how I think it should be.
Trump
That's
says
not the funding thing, obviously. I know I took us on a sidetrack.
I think that is a good point because he's saying that it's not just about funding, that he's going after now universities' accreditations. Here he is.
I will fire the radical left accreditors that have allowed our colleges to become dominated by Marxist maniacs and lunatics. We will then accept applications for new accreditors who will impose real standards on colleges once again and once and for all. These standards will include defending the American tradition and Western civilization, protecting free speech, eliminating wasteful administrative positions that drive up costs incredibly.
You listen to that and you kind of find it hard to argue with him.
I do, although you and I have talked about this before. My biggest criticism with Trump is he's not wrong, and I'm not going to use the word I want to use, he's just sometimes like a jerk about it. Like Marxists, maniacs, and lunatics. Like, I don't think
have you been on a college campus?
I don't think there are maniacs and lunatics. Like, again, I don't think he's wrong. I just wish he would say it slightly differently. I know he's not going to do this, and I know people might not agree with him, but I really do believe, given the way he won the election, there was, and given that Democrats brand us in the dumpster and they don't know what to do, there is actually opportunity to find some common ground. Now, Democrats may never cooperate with him, and I get that. And you and I have talked about that.
Yeah, they won't.
But I just wish he would, and he won't drop that kind of language and rhetoric because it's not him. I understand every part of that. Yeah. I just wish he would, because he does make some good points, and I think people gets lost in that, what I think is just unnecessarily inflammatory rhetoric.
Okay.
Thanks for not agreeing. Oh, okay.
All right.
That was a thing.
Yeah, have a good weekend. Why Joe Biden's health cover-up make President Trump's latest physical oh so much important.
I was in very good shape. Good heart, a good soul, very good soul. Coming back from Walter Reed, and I'm playing with you, but I think well. Every test you can imagine. I was there for a long time. The yearly physical. I think I did well.
All right, President Trump talking about his yearly physical. Said it went well. He's now in Florida after he went to Walter Reed for his exam. Said he took a cognitive test and got every question right. He also said we will have to wait until Sunday to get the results. But the press doesn't really seem to care that much about Donald Trump's health right now, which is interesting because back during his first term, he walked down a ramp at West Point after a speech. There's the video, and CNN wanted to invoke the 25th Amendment. There aren't those questions this time around. Made us think about why. It's not like the press loves Donald Trump anymore. And this is why. Because of what we witnessed during the Biden administration. Every day, White House and the press told Americans not to believe their own eyes, like this time when he wandered off, or when Joe Biden disappeared for days, when he would not talk to reporters for weeks, when he wildly would misspeak on things. And the administration, of course, the Biden administration and their friends in the press would tell us, no, you don't understand. He's a specimen of mental and physical acuity.
The most difficult part about a meeting with President Biden is preparing for it, because he is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented.
I'm telling you, this guy's tough. He's smart. He's on his game.
I spent sometimes countless hours with him, whether it's in the Oval Office, whether it's on the road. And I believe, for me, you're asking me my personal opinion, he is sharp. He is on top of things.
He is as sharp as ever, as I have known him to be in my engagement and my experience with him.
And right now, there are people complaining that the Republicans are too North Korean dear leader to Donald Trump. That was some dear leader stuff. But KJP, as she was known, kept to the motto, nothing to see here. And the press, of course, carried the water. Anybody who questions his health was a conspiracy theorist. To be fair, this administration is handling things a little bit differently. Donald Trump's is. The last time Trump was in office, the White House doctor made it seem like he was examining Superman.
Explain to me how a guy who eats McDonald's and fried chicks and all those Diet Cokes and who never exercises is in as good a shape as you say he's in.
It's called genetics. I don't know. It's some people have just great genes. I told the president that if he had a healthier diet over the last 20 years, he might live to be 200 years old. I don't know. I mean, he has incredible genes. I just assume.
That earned Ronnie Jackson a seat in Congress eventually, a moment that you just kind of can't forget. It happened again today, not from Trump's doctor, but one of the bloggers now in the White House press briefing room. He or she works for Lindell TV. That's the network run by the CEO of MyPillow.
He actually looks healthier than ever before, healthier than he did 8 years ago, and I'm sure everybody in this room could agree. Is he working out with Bobby Kennedy, and is he eating less McDonald's?
I can confirm the president is in very good shape, as you see, on a near daily basis here.
Both maybe a little over the top. But Trump takes more questions in a month than Biden did in a term. We can all see it. Here's the amazing thing. The press isn't demanding any answers about Trump's health this time around. They are too embarrassed. They know that those questions will simply bring up how they treated Biden. It tells you the incredible scandal of Biden's health. Even the White House press corps, and this is tough to do, is embarrassed by it. Tomorrow, Iran faces a key decision to either give up their hopes and dreams of a nuclear weapon or face the consequences. President Trump's special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, meets with the Iranians tomorrow in Oman. The president reiterated his stance against Iran moments ago on Air Force One.
I want them not to have a nuclear weapon. I want Iran to be a wonderful, great, happy country. But they can't have a nuclear weapon. I want them to flourish, but they can't have a nuclear weapon.
With us now, Joel Rubin, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, author of the briefing book on Substack. I subscribe. You should too.
Thank you, Leland.
Welcome, my friend. Okay, you're not allowed to talk about the Obama nuclear deal because it was a terrible deal. Trump was right to get out of it. But we are going to look forward.
Taking away my argument here.
Did, yes. We're going to look forward.
Yeah.
Does Iran make a deal?
Iran is very much in a position where it better make a deal, because if it doesn't make a deal, I do think we're going to see military action.
B-2s in Diego Garcia, B-52s inside of
We're just weeks away from bombing of the Houthis, cost $1 billion, and the president didn't even blink. Prime Minister Netanyahu was here a couple of days ago. He had to swallow hard in the Oval Office and accept the fact that the president wants to try diplomacy. But he understands that if this fails, he has a green light, and I think that's what we're up against right now.
Do the Iranians understand that?
Well, they probably, in their heart of hearts, hope it's not true. Intellectually, I'm sure they do at a certain point. But, Iran has faced major military consequences over the past year for its actions. Israel has neutralized its defenses, undermined and destroyed its forward arms through Hezbollah and Hamas. And I think they need to have some realistic assessment of what they can negotiate. And if they try to leg it out like they did with President Biden, quite frankly, they blew off President Biden. They were close to returning to the nuclear deal. And the consequences were not severe. I think this time we'll probably see a different outcome.
Donald Trump and his other spokespeople and some of his national security staff have been quite forceful on this issue. Here's Caroline Levitt about the consequences of not making a deal.
His ultimate goal and the ultimate objective is to ensure that Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon. The president believes in diplomacy, direct talks, talking directly in the same room in order to achieve that goal. But he's made it very clear to the Iranians, and his national security team will as well, that all options are on the table, and Iran has a choice to make. You can agree to President Trump's demand, or there will be all hell to pay.
All hell to pay. We learned the consequences from both Barack Obama and Joe Biden not backing up red lines. Does the Trump administration have the attention of Iran that they will?
I think they have the attention, but I do want to also point out it's very important that these are strong threats, but still there is a debate within the White House about whether or not military action is the wise course. And we're seeing it even on the outside. Tucker Carlson, for example, saying those who call for war are enemies of America. And many...
Why do you think that is? Why? Look, you send a few B-2s over, use bunker busters, go in, eliminate Iran's nuclear weapons program. Iran's already tried to hit Israel. It didn't work. What's the debate about?
There's a lot of layers to it, but the short one is that it's going to take a massive military effort to truly eradicate a nuclear program, and it's going to need to be verified, and that means there's going to need to be ongoing strikes, and that's a heavy lift. And the concern is that it's going to explode the region and suck us into another major Middle East war. I'm not sure that's exactly how it will play out, but I guarantee you the American people do not want to get sucked into another major Middle East war. And so the idea is here, if we can get out of the nuclear conflict,
the pictures we're looking at is
that's where we want to go.
Bombers stuck in Diego Garcia, which is the closest.
Yeah, that's a real threat.
In Iran. It's interesting, though. I have been doing this same story since I was a young Mideast correspondent in 2010. When is Israel going to bomb Iran? This is different, though, because this is not talking about Israel. This is talking about the United States. How does that make it different?
It makes it very different because if the United States is involved, that means that the bridging capacity, the continual bombing raids can be executed properly. And also, we can't overstate it enough. The past year of military action in the region by Israel in essentially eliminating the Hezbollah threat from north and in hitting into Iran itself and neutralizing its air defenses, that is a significant game changer. And that's why I think the Israelis say they have a window of opportunity now, but they need American support to really make this stick and be a hard bombing campaign that would not cause a greater rupture in the Middle East.
All right. How significant is this weekend?
Well, this is the opening salvo in diplomacy. This is where Steve Witkoff is going to assess whether or not he can be directly in the room. They're not going to be in the same room. Then they will hopefully get to the same room if they have a nice dialogue between the Omanis. And then there's 60 days. I think this is just the beginning. This is not going to be a detailed negotiation. And we'll see if he comes out there saying we can make a deal, then they'll go forward with more details.
The Iranians only have ever responded to strength.
Yeah.
The fact that there's B-2 bombers right now parked a couple hundred miles from their shores, does that change their calculus?
Well, I think it's clearly that the impact and the suffering and of the losses over the past year we've discussed, as well as the maximum pressure sanctions campaign that is trying to be put back on. All of that has to get their attention. They'd be very wise to take this threat seriously to their security, because if the 60 days go past and there's no deal, I do think that the Israelis are going to put the pressure on. And I think that President Trump's going to say he can't find a diplomatic path out.
Good to see you, Joel. As always, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Joel Rubin with us. One thing you'll be talking about tomorrow and the rest of the weekend when we come back.
This is Nick Smith. Get my podcast In the Mix at newsnationnow.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
For the Jews, this weekend begins Passover, Chag Sameach. For the Christians, it's Easter. Holy Week begins on Sunday. And for all of us golf fans, it is the Masters. Enjoy 2 days with a tradition unlike